Everything looks fine, and we're going to rock and roll on some good topic today on becoming a trusted advisor to the federal government. You probably know this, that people buy from those they know, like, and trust, right? You probably have heard this, and those people are considered trusted advisors, right? When somebody knows, likes, and trusts you, they begin to look at you as a trusted advisor. And in this training, we're going to talk about how you can become a trusted advisor to your target federal buyers, your target customers, and how you can start winning more contracts because of that status as a trusted advisor. It's different than being a subject matter expert. You can be a subject matter expert right now, but if no one knows you, then you're not a trusted advisor to anybody. You're just really smart, which is fine. What we want to do is to get people to know you so that you become a trusted advisor. People seek you out. And so today I'm going to be covering three main areas, right? I'm going to talk about how to create content that demonstrates your subject matter expertise. I'm going to talk about the value of interpreting complex topics and policies into plain English. And then the third thing I want to talk about is how RFI responses can help you bypass gatekeepers, right? And just get in and demonstrate your expertise to the people who really are your customers. So if you want your customers to start looking at you before they drop RFIs, you want your customers to start seeking out your advice as a trusted advisor, put into the chat, I'm a trusted advisor. Let me know you're along for the ride, and we're going to rock and roll. So I'm a trusted advisor into the chat. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about as it relates to becoming a trusted advisor to your federal buyers and how that can lead to winning more contracts is you want to create more content that demonstrates your subject matter expertise. It does you, again, no good if no one knows you, right? I think I said something like, if no one knows what you know, then how can they trust you, right? If no one knows what you know, how can they trust you? And it's not like they don't trust you. They don't distrust you. They just don't know you. So how could they possibly like or trust you? And we want to be able to get them to know you, which will then lead them to like and especially trust you. And when they trust you, they start seeking your advice as a trusted advisor. And so I want to share in the next few minutes just some ideas in how you can begin to demonstrate your subject matter expertise. And so I'm going to bounce around a little bit between some examples of what you can put out and some platforms where you can put it. So I'll bounce back and forth on that just as I feel, right? So one of the ways that I just put at the top is, I don't know how long you've been watching my training, but if you've been watching my training for a while, you notice that we occasionally say, if you would like this handout, let us know, and we'll provide a free handout. That's something you could do. You could create a handout that's related to something you're talking about or something you think people might find valuable. I'm going to talk about some examples of handouts, but don't keep this information to yourself. Give it freely to industry, but also to the government, your target customers. Let them find it. There's pretty much nothing you know that is that somebody else doesn't know. Here's a good example with me, right? I get this all the time. Actually, I don't get this anymore. I used to get this all the time, and especially in the beginning of this run of 200 videos that we did live events, is people were saying, you're just telling everything, you're giving everything out there. There's people who I do some consulting with small business customers, right? And people would say, oh, your competitors are taking that information. I'm like, I don't care. First off, if you look at the government, the GovCon Chamber of Commerce's mission, our mission is to help all small businesses, and we can't do that ourselves. And what we want to do is make sure everybody's teaching the same process. And so if we've got people who come in, see our process, and take it, I can't do anything about it, but I'd rather let you have access to it and risk somebody else taking it and trying to duplicate it. But the one thing they can't duplicate is us. They can't duplicate my energy, my experience, my take on it. I can say the process is this, and no one else is going to run with it. And the reason I'm saying this is it's the same for you, right? If you're really good, if you're a subject matter expert at what you're doing, and I say something like, hey, lay out the 10 steps to doing something, and you go, well, that's our approach. It's like, well, no, that's just the 10 steps. Everybody probably knows those 10 steps. But even if they get those 10 steps, they don't have your experiences around how to make sure you avoid the pitfalls when you walk on those 10 steps or things like that, right? But if you worry about what people who might take from you do, then you'll never be serving the customers that you want to serve, and then no one will know you. And so then you'll protect all your information and not succeed. But if you freely share, you will find that the upside will be way, way bigger than the downside. So think about handouts, and I'll give you examples as we go forward. But I want to give you a little bit of where could you be putting content out that demonstrates yourself as a SME? And as I say these, right, think about which one might fit best for you. Don't do all of them. If you're not doing any of them right now, just pick one that I'm talking about and drive with that and get experience with it, right? I've done blogs, I've done podcasts, I've done videos, I've done live events, I've done webinars, I've done video face-to-face like this, I've done just slides so no one has to see my face. And so I've done all these different things, but I've done them incrementally. I've begun to get better and better. And so don't think you have to do a lot. Just you have to get started, right? And so examples of places you could go or platforms, if you will, you could do podcasts. This is where you're sharing your expertise, and I'll give you examples in a bit about what that expertise might be. But a podcast is just you talking to a microphone. Don't worry about face or anything else. It's just me and my microphone, which is right there, just talking. And so I might say, hey, here's the top 10 things to be worried about with SharePoint migration. Here's what I want you to think about when you're ordering office supplies, right? Ergonomics is really important. Here's the top things you want to consider on ergonomics and how it'll impact price or something. You can just talk, and all you're doing is talking. And I've got whole other trainings about how to do podcasts, how to get running. But that's a great way to get started where you can share the message. You can do videos just like I'm doing where I'm giving tips, right? Sometimes these tips are a short amount of time. For a long time, I did 1 minute tips. Now I'm doing 30-minute trainings. So you decide whatever you're comfortable, but with videos that it's basically a podcast with video, with face, right? Another example could be webinars. So think about YouTube with videos or webinars. You could do a webinar where there's no face. A friend of mine, Jennifer Schaus, does webinars all the time about government contracting. And I don't think they ever have any of our faces on there. Like I've been a guest on her show before, but they get in, they get to the meat, and they get out, and it's all slide briefings, very effective, good information. And so you could do that as well with your area of expertise. LinkedIn posts are a great way to get content out. Again, coming back to creating content that demonstrates your subject matter expertise, a LinkedIn post might be good. You can go in and begin to learn how people are posting on LinkedIn. You can see my posts, you can see other people in all sorts of different areas, including your own industry. Get out of the government contracting world a little bit and look at some of these other people as well. But you can come back and really a LinkedIn post is a mini blog, if you will, a couple of paragraphs. If you're a subject matter expert, you should be able to turn right to the whiteboard like I do and just write a whole bunch of content, right? And so think about it from that angle. And actually in the chat, just let me know as you're hearing podcasts, videos, webinars, maybe writing a blog or a LinkedIn post, which one sounds like would be the most easiest for you to get started? One of the reasons I'm asking that question is because I might, depending on the order people are saying or the results of what I'm asking here, I might create some content in the next week's live or something that just says, hey, here's top 10 tips for how to do a podcast. Anyways, so speaking of top 10 lists, right? That's some of the content that you could do. So just some ideas about what content you could create. One of my favorite is top 3 this, top 10 this. If you look at my content, I describe things like that, right? Here's the top 10 ways to bypass a gatekeeper, or top 10 ways to get into the federal government, right? If you just think for a second right now, make this a working training. Don't just listen, right? But participate, because you could take this as notes for yourself. But if you wrote right now, if you just wrote a title to top 10 something, what could you do for your area of expertise right now? Like top 10 SharePoint migration tips, top 10 this. If you can come up with a title on the top 10, throw it in the chat. Part of throwing it in the chat will be the start of your commitment to yourself of, hey, let me go ahead and write that so I have it ready for Monday or something. Another thing that I love are roadmaps. Here's another way to demonstrate your subject matter expertise. I might think about Zero Trust, for example, which is a cybersecurity play or service. But basically, I can sit there and say, hey, here's a roadmap to Zero Trust success, or Zero Trust migrations, or Zero Trust gap analysis roadmap or something. But a roadmap that basically is the steps, but put into a little bit more flow type diagram that says, do this, then you do this, then you do this. I can already see this, and I'm not some Zero Trust expert, right? I'm very knowledgeable about it, but I could build a Zero Trust roadmap right now that tells a government command or office, hey, here's the roadmap to fully implementing Zero Trust in your organization. It begins with doing a gap analysis. Where are you on zero trust awareness and knowledge? Where are you on zero trust implemented in your tools? Things like that. Like I could go forward. So that's something you could do that's pretty, if you stick to your area of expertise, like your subject matter expertise, then you can write this content. And when you're putting it out, people who see this will begin to go, damn, that makes sense. I wonder if I can get Janie in here and to come in and talk to us about it, right? Can I get her on the phone and talk to her? And so that's why you want to be putting this out. I talked about some other ideas, and I'll just throw these out quickly. You can do product comparisons. I might look at 2 or 3 tools that are scheduling tools for events or something and say, hey, here's a side-by-side comparison of the top 3 scheduling tools, whatever that is, right? Here's the top 3 comparisons of, or the top 3 elevator manufacturer comparisons or something. Here's why Otis is this way and whoever else does whatever the other manufacturers are for elevators. But a product comparison is awesome because when you think about your buyers, they're doing market research. They're trying to understand not just technical approach, things like that, but sometimes they're looking at products and going, well, how can I tell the difference between Google Cloud, Microsoft Cloud, Amazon Cloud? It's all so confusing. Well, if you can build an easy to understand single page comparison, or several pages if you want to expand it with pictures or something. But if you can make it easy for your buyers to understand, they will look at it, learn, appreciate it without even talking to you. You will be their trusted advisor. And then they'll naturally look to you when they're looking out to industry to talk, right? They might look at other places as well, but now you're on their radar because they've looked at your comparison. Another quick example that I've used before is repurposing content. So I talked about Amazon, Google, and Microsoft Cloud, but I might look in and Amazon writes a document. Like actually, I just did, here's a great one. Otis. So I'll go back to elevators, right? Otis put out a blog, says 3 tips for choosing the right elevator maintenance contract for you. And I love that. When I saw that, I was like, oh, that's perfect. If I was in the elevator business, if you're on this call today, if I was in the elevator business, I'd be grabbing that article and sharing it out and saying, hey, look what Otis said on their blog. So I'm giving them full credit, but I'm repurposing that information out. I'm like, these are the 3 things that popped to my attention right away, and you should check it out. Go ahead and see the full article here. You get this borrowed credibility of Otis, the elevator, huge manufacturer, and yourself. You're borrowing their credibility, which really makes you seem like this trusted source. What Gus and I like to call the supreme domain authority on your topic. So I've got a bunch of others in here. You can ask me later if you want some more ideas, but I want to move on to the next slide. And I can see that I'm just cruising on time. So in this case, though, one of the ways you can become a trusted advisor to your buyers is just creating content that demonstrates value of your subject matter expertise. So do me a favor, put in the chat, create content. Sorry. I had a little pause there. In the chat, put create content. If you understand that creating content is one of the first things you can do to begin to be visible as an expert, which will then lead to you being a trusted advisor to your federal buyers or your target customers. Okay, so let's move on to a second way that you can become a trusted advisor, right? This path. And this is one of my favorite, right, is to take complex topics and policies and turn them into plain English. Sometimes your buyers just either don't have the time or the capacity to keep up to date on everything that's new, right? And everything that's coming down the pike from policy level or vendors are putting out. They just don't have the time to look at all that. And you can put it into plain English. So I've got a couple of examples I wanted to use here that might get your mind rolling and think about it yourself. Like, what could you do in your area of expertise? So the first example is my all-time favorite for anybody who's doing Microsoft. But Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, Salesforce, these guys put out updates. It seems like every single day, but certainly every single week. I get a notice as an administrator saying, hey, this is what Microsoft has put out. These are the updates, et cetera. Well, most of your customers have just no time and really not the brain. I don't want to say, like, they're certainly smart enough. What I'm trying to say is, like, they just don't have the energy to put towards looking at this week after week after week because they're busy running their agencies or commands or whatever. And so if you can take the updates that come out of Microsoft or Oracle or whoever, if you can take those crazy, complicated words that they share that are coming out of the developers' minds or something, and you can turn it into plain English, you can say, hey, these are the ones you need to pay attention to. These ones, don't worry about it. They're just, they're here. You can look at them, but don't worry about them. But these 3 you must pay attention to because they're really important to your agency for this. If you're a subject matter expert, you could write that in 30 minutes or less. So if you're doing a once a week, hey, here's this, here's the Microsoft updates converted to English type thing, people will appreciate that. And you can use that as content that could go into a newsletter. You could just post it as a LinkedIn post. You can deliver it in many different ways. You could do it in a podcast, right? But you're turning it into English, that complex updates. What is Otis Elevator saying about maintenance stuff? Turning that into plain English. Sometimes they even talk in the technical jargon. A second way is two other ones that are similar guidance that came out of DoD, Department of Defense. They put out a zero trust strategy and a roadmap. So you can look in there and point out what some of the most important things are for a command to pay attention to related to implementing zero trust. DoD is talking about, here's the zero trust strategy for defense agencies, services, whatever. And so this is what DoD wants them to do. Well, it's 50 something pages. They're not going to read it all. People just don't do that anymore. And so if you can go in and pull out the highlights and be able to communicate it in 30 seconds, right? In 3 minutes, in a 5-minute read or something, if you can do that, it begins to put you at the forefront. You're giving and you're demonstrating your expertise. And when they start reading it and making, having discussions about what you wrote, you are a trusted advisor to them before you've talked to them. Now, the next step is hopefully they'll begin to come to you. That's the whole idea, is they're seeing you as an expert. They're getting to know you. Then they will trust you, right? And so one other example that I really liked, and I wanted to mention this for our AI folks, people doing artificial intelligence, machine learning, but the Department of Defense put out a guidance on the responsibility on how to responsibly implement artificial intelligence strategies and implementations throughout the Department of Defense, right? And they put it out. It's 47 pages. And I was looking at it. Let me just bring it up again. So because I had this little document. I'm not showing it to you, but I just want to remind myself what I was going to say is what I did is it's 47 pages. Again, most people aren't going to read it. In this case, this document kind of applies to everybody. And so your ability to take this complex document that is generally more of an IT audience document and turn it into language that the pharmacy department in the VA or an HR department or somebody in the data shop, et cetera, these people would understand. And so one of the examples of resharing this complex document, it's a great document and it talks about the future. And if you're in AI in the government, you need to read it, right? It's the AI strategy and implementation pathway. But one of the things I liked is they have this section where they lay out the implementation lines of effort. And there's 6 of them. And so I would turn that into like a little PowerPoint slide, 6 slides, and each slide has a different tenet or line of effort, if you will. And I would just use very big font to describe what's in there. And when I say I would use very big font, what I mean is that if I've got a slide, I would not go below 28-point font, which means I have to use fewer and fewer words to communicate what was in there. And if I can do that, now I'm turning it into plain English. And in a couple of seconds, like 30 seconds or something, your customers can see what's in there. If you'd like to learn more, I'd love to have you give me a call and I can come in and talk to you about the Artificial Intelligence Strategy and Implementation Guide. Right now, maybe they don't even read the document. They say, hey, yeah, can you come in and talk to us about it? What else did you see in there? What else should we be paying attention to? They look to you for what is in that document because you're the one serving it out there. So hopefully that makes sense as I'm sharing that. Let me find my deck because I went away from this. So if you understand, though, put in the chat, make the complex easy. Make the complex easy. That's one of my favorite ones because if you can turn things into plain language, plain English, unlike my ability to speak, then your customers would really appreciate that. All right, let's move on to the last one. I only got a few minutes left. This is a great way to bypass gatekeepers is to use RFI responses. So when you think about becoming a trusted advisor to federal buyers, sometimes you can't even get to your federal buyers, right? I'm describing ways that are, for the most part, social media focused, trying to reach your buyer. But how can you drive straight in to the office? You throw a little information bomb that goes over the wall and straight down to your target audience. Well, RFI responses, request for information, not sources sought. And we'll talk about that in a second. But RFI is request for information. This is where they're generally talking about the requirements, and they're still fleshing things out about what they want to do. Compared to sources sought is just, I'm looking for who can provide these services. They've already moved forward pretty far. But RFI, they're looking for information. They're looking to talk to industry. if you can write for the win, if you can put your best foot forward in your RFI, you will bypass any small business specialist who you've ever felt like is not making the introduction for you. You'll bypass the contracting officer who you may feel like is not introducing you, and you'll go straight into the technical shop, because the RFIs tend to be about solution discussions. Talk to us about what type of products you might be thinking, what type of technical approach might you be thinking. What should we be thinking as it relates to our requirements, is what the government's saying when they put out RFIs. And so if you write a response and it follows the government's direction, then it will be reviewed by the program office people. You're talking about people who are basically going to be decision makers on a proposal at the end of the sales cycle, right? And so you're able to speak directly to them. If you write it for the win, if you put your best information in there, forget about this whole, a proprietary or whatever. It's like, is there really anything that we do that is so Apple iPod or Apple iPhone proprietary? I mean, not so much. And if there is, you can leave some of that out. But some of it is just about, like, if you think about, hey, here's the migration path. Well, if you're a Microsoft partner, we all follow basically the same path. And so what you want to do is share this information with a little bit of extra value in there. But when you do that, what I always say is write as if you're already working for them, because they will read it and go, are these guys working with us? And they will, if they don't invite you in, you at least are now on their radar as somebody who's giving. I had a customer say to me the other day, the reason they like me is because I just give and I try to understand their business before I even say, hey, do you want to work with me or anything? We're just giving. And that's what I want you to do when you think about the RFI, is think about, I just want to solve your questions from the RFI. You put the RFI out because you want to know stuff. I'm going to help you. Here's the best path forward. I hope you go with us, but here's the best path forward. I really want you to think about this. When you do that, you are demonstrating your subject matter expertise. You're building the trust with that customer, and then they will in turn begin to seek you out as a trusted advisor, because I trust what you have on paper. I'm probably going to trust you when you come in and have a conversation with us. I've been invited in my past company into program office meetings where they said, hey, we got your RFI. We'd love for you to come in and talk about it. And then it just went to us, right? The word just went to us because when we talked, we gave them everything they wanted, and they fought to figure out how to get the business to us. I believe you can do that same thing if you're a subject matter expert in a particular core competency. So if you understand what I was saying there, put RFI responses into the chat. Just let me know you're tracking that. RFIs are so valuable by just putting RFI responses. And let me recap while you're doing that, right? Today, we talked about 3 ways to help you be a trusted advisor to federal buyers, right? So you can start winning more contracts. First way is create more subject matter expert content. The second way is turn complex information into plain English for your customers. And then the third way is to put your best foot forward when you're writing RFI responses. Write for the win, right? And so here's a tip for you as you go away and you're looking at the training. What's one thing I can do? Here's what I would recommend for content resharing. It'll take you a few minutes. Pick one partner type document that you could repurpose. So I talked about Otis Elevator, where they had a blog. I've talked about DoD had a document, right? I look at DoD as a partner. I can look to Microsoft. Who do you partner with, or who do you, what OEM or vendors do you work with or support customers with? And just look to them and go onto their site and find their blog or find their news or find their white papers, find something like that and repurpose it out. Make sure you give them full credit, but do that. It'll take you 15 minutes tops to do that. You're not trying to rewrite it all. You're just trying to make it available to your customers, and you begin this path of building credibility. So if you'd like to work with us, we'd love to have you work with us, right?